Place to start our conversation right here in studio. Mesha Kodede at the far end is a political analyst, and next to me is Kiprop Ruto Marimoi. And the last Kenyan said that Raila ni wetu tunamjua waonge. It's just a way of calling for dialogue. Yes. Let me just begin with maybe your comments on the protest. There was some and still are agendas that the Azimio team have. Their demands that they have, but from what happened yesterday, Kiprop, do you think that it was a good way probably of having these demands or calling out to the government to meet these demands? Yeah.
Thank you, Purity. I think, like you've said, the person who have just been interviewed in Nyeri said it very clearly. Demonstrations is something that is anchored in law. If you look at Article 37 of our Constitution, it's very clear. Every Kenyan has a right to demonstrate when there is an infringement to any part of the law. So whatever that is happening now, driven or led by the Honorable Raila Odinga, is actually anchored in law. And there is nothing wrong if Kenyans feel that certain right is being offended in any way. That is as per the law. Now, if you look at the list or the demands made by Azimio side, one of them, of course, is to ask the government led by President Ruto to open IBC servers. Most people will say, okay, open the IBC servers. Then what next?
Yeah.
Okay. Are we going to go back to re-election? Are you demanding for a recount of the votes? Mm-hmm. Another demand that the Cherera 4 must be reinstated. Remember, the 4 commissioners, most of them resigned in their positions immediately after Kenya Kwanza government came in. Yeah. And to argue that they must be reinstated, yet they resigned, is another thing altogether. Mm-hmm. Okay. The other item that Azimio leaders are pushing for is the reduction of the cost of living in Kenya. Yeah. That is something, a discussion that it is will look at, touch on so many aspects. Mm-hmm. The prices for fuel, for example. Yeah. The cost of flour. Okay. You look at the impact of climate change in terms of our economy. So there's a lot of issues that if they were to be addressed, will not even take the period that they're talking about. Okay. Mm-hmm. So as per the law, they have the right to do demonstration. Mm-hmm. They have the right to picket or to present petitions to government institutions. Mm-hmm. But remember, Article 37 of the Constitution is very clear. And I would like just to read the way it is, mm-hmm. that every person has a right to peacefully, unharmed, to assemble, to demonstrate, to picket. Now, the demand of being unarmed, okay, if you look at it from what you've seen yesterday in the demonstration, all were the requirements of under Article 37 met, okay, and that is where you see the running battles between the protesters and the police, whether the Article 37 of the Constitution was met, and I believe going forward we'll be able to look at it critically in terms of whether the demands that the opposition leader is pushing for will be achieved or not.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. And actually, I'll be coming back to you because you're saying there's one thing to demand for the reinstatement of the Cherera 4, but now achieving that is another thing. So you'll tell us what it will take and if that's possible, what the resignation means. Yes. Okay. So Odede, once again, welcome to the program. Please just a comment on yesterday's demonstrations by the Azimio. Remember, they had a plan that we want to get our people together and march to State House so that we again present our a demand letter to President William Ruto, but we saw they were not even allowed to make their way to the CBD, and also we saw that police was trying again to, the officers were trying to pass any gatherings. Okay, that was not also allowed. So what's your comment on the demonstrations, how the protesters conducted themselves, how the police again came in to ensure that there was calmness and peace as that happened?
Thank you, Purity. I think we need to look at this thing probably not just as Kenya but also as Africa, because right now there are so many of those kind of protests going on in Africa. Of course, there are also other parts of the world that are seeing this protest. Democracy in itself creates room for those protests, like my brother here have said. But does it really work for Africa? Surely. Because the African government think protest is a war against them. The protesters in Africa think when a protest is called, they have been called to go and remove president in the office. But the West, who sold to us democracy, have their way of protesting. It would interest you to know that Israel have been on the streets for 11 weeks now, and you can't hear anything, and you can't see the ugly scenes we are seeing. And they still have police, and they still have a government that is functioning. So in the Western concept of protest inside democracy, it's just a way to gain attention to the government, to tell them that we are feeling uneasy about 1, 2, 3, 4. And then an opportunity is found to discuss those issues and see where to rest them. But in the African perspective, the protesters think when a protest is called, it means let us go and fight. And the government in Africa also think when protesters are on the street, it is because they want to fight us. So it's no longer about issues anymore. Yeah. So that is one. Coming to our protest yesterday, the truth is the government did not handle the protest very well. Why do I say that? Because, Purity, it is unimaginable that you wake up in a slum like Kibra and then you find police all over. Who did you promise a fight in your own space at home? So how did government separate the people of Kibra who are going for the protest versus those who are just going to the company, industrial area, Mjengo, wherever they usually wake up to go to? How did they separate? Because all they woke up to were presence of police all over, and then everybody is pushed back into their homes, like you can't go anywhere. And then if you are 3 or 4 or 5, whichever group, you are dispersed via tear gas canisters. I think that was not the best way to handle the whole thing. We also saw places that are, we would call them controlled spaces or private spaces. In the CBD, for example, KICC. We saw KICC has got a fence, and the moment you are throwing tear gas to whether you call them protesters and leaders who are there, sometimes you trigger their mind to imagine that this is a war, let us now be ready and start running around with police here and there. But we must also say, even to protesters, there has to be something that I am not sure whether we can handle. Because inside our team protesting, there are people who destroy other people's property. And that is not acceptable. So I think the best way to have the protest, before we get into the details around the issues that necessitates those protests, is first the leaders to have control of the people they are calling out to protest. That is one. And how do they gain control of the people they are calling out to protest?
Right.
There has to be an opportunity given to them that this is the space call your people here, address them, and march to wherever you want to march, deliver your memorandum, and then disperse the team, go home. People protesting must have a commander. But what we saw yesterday is Raila is at Serena with other leaders having their meeting, and the place is already cordoned. Heavy presence of police. Now the people who are supposed to gather and then have their commander come and address them and give them the way forward. We are marching from here peacefully to this place, and when we get to this place, this is what we are doing, and after that we will tell you what next, or we are dispersing home, or anything they want to say. That chance was never given. So when he leaves Serena, his supporters are already running around with police inside the CBD. He is also being chased here and there. So that is what made the scene become even too ugly. So I think there is a way the government can handle this better than they did yesterday. Yeah. Because we both agree that protest is one of the fundamental rights given to every Kenyan in the Constitution. So what makes it ugly is what we need to deal with.
And some important points that Odede is raising, Kiprop. You said that every Kenyan has a right to demonstrate and even picket. Maybe you can just, in a layman's language, tell us what that really means, because we saw some leaders that are allied to the ruling party saying that they will not allow, they succeeded into not allowing Raila into the CBD, and in the near future they'll also not allow him even on the estates. Okay, is that how it's supposed to be?
Thank you, Purity. I think I will agree with my brother here that the modalities of conducting demonstration and picketing in Kenya is still a challenge. And this is much attributed to the lacuna, the vacuum in the law in terms of how should we manage our people, like he has said, the commander. Okay. Now, if you look at Article 37, what it is saying that you have the freedom to picket, to demonstrate, and that provision ends there. It does not say government should enact the way other provisions are provided, a modality on how these things must be done. Remember the reason why, in the first place, they denied the Azimio the license to proceed with the demonstration is that there was late application for license. Again, remember, the law does not say if you give us this period of time, then we are going to give you a license to do such demonstration. But I think the challenge that we are having now is looking at the former demonstration that we've had in this country, okay? Where it is marred by pelting of stones, destruction of property. And then again, like what my brother said, that in Africa we look at demonstration from going to uproot a government that is already existing, okay? And that is the notion that maybe this particular government is looking at, because if you look at the arguments that the president is advancing is that Honorable Raila is putting the country into a chokehold, okay? Is trying to destabilize, cause anarchy in the country. Now, balancing the two, you have the right under the Constitution to do demonstration. At the same time, there's no guiding sort of principles or guidelines on how it should be done. Okay, my proposal would have been, if there's that particular regulation on that aspect, okay, there's this particular timeline. We zone areas where you can do the picketing and demonstration, okay? And then again, which something that would be very difficult to manage is what my brother is alluding to, is how the commander can be able to talk to his people, okay? Tell them we are going to just hold a white handkerchief as a sign of peace, okay? Now, and I saw another video of a gentleman having a suitcase full of stones. I don't know, maybe it was comedy. But that tells you how the commander is not in charge of his troops. Okay? So there's a lot of gray area in terms of trying to control and manage any particular demonstration. And remember, this is a political sort of demonstration. It's not any other demonstration like the one we did as lawyers during the killing of one of our colleagues. This one, you don't know who is your member, you don't know who is a thief, you don't know who is someone who is taking an advantage of the situation so that they can loot. And that is why the police are doing what they are doing now, being preemptive in terms of trying to curtail this process at the onset. My colleague has said that someone wakes up in Kibra or any other part of Nairobi or in Kenya. The first thing he sees is a police officer in full riot gear. Okay, several of them. Now, this is someone who was going to do his or her normal chores during the day. Now, that is where the problem is. And this is something that Kenya is going to face unless we change. Even the demonstrators themselves, those who are going to protest, they must be able to change how the modus operandi, how they operate, and what is the end game. And actually, this is what most of the Kenya Kwanza team are saying, that is the end result of this demonstration led by Honorable Raila, maybe according to them, and going into the previous demonstration that he has held, that he wants to sneak his way to government. Okay? And I think this is something that it is subject to discussion across for the longest time.
Yeah, and before your thoughts, let's allow us to take a breather, and then we shall come back to now following what happened yesterday, who then broke the law and what actions should be taken. All right, time for us to take a break. This conversation continues shortly. Keep it here.